So well done so far. We're very much almost at the end of this tutorial. So you will have picked up some pretty useful 3D modelling tools that you can go on to use with your own 3D model, which you'll be creating next. So we're just going to have a look at some finishing touches now. And in this finishing touches stage, we're going to look at scaling the model correctly, applying and adjusting materials and change the colour of the model, completing a test render, which we can save and use in our presentations later on today. And then finally, making sure that your project is saved correctly and ready for texture artists to add texture to it. So let's start off with the scale of our model. So just to give you a little bit of a perspective on the scale and how scale works within a Maya scene, this grid is approximately the size, or slightly smaller, of a standard ruler. So at the moment, our tank is currently very, very small in comparison to what it would be in its true and proper scale. So one thing we need to do is make sure that we are keeping to the approximate scales. Now, we don't have to be too accurate. We don't have to be too picky, and we don't have to be too accurate here. We can do a good guess on how big this tank will be, but we just need to make sure that we are getting the approximate scales correct. So now I'm much more happy with the scale of the tank in our scene in relation to our reference point, which is this grid section here. Now, obviously, this is a stylized tank, so it's not going to be the same size as a real tank due to its proportions, but we've approximately got this correct, and we just want to make sure that we are sticking to approximately accurate scales for our models. And this is so that when everything is brought in together at the end of the process into your final game file, that everything is a similar scale and not too many adjustments will need to be made. Next, we're going to look at applying and adjusting materials. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the object and hold down right click whilst hovering over the object. I'm going to go all the way down to apply a new material and then go to new material. Now this window will pop up, and when it does, we want to go down to Arnold and click on the shader option. Once we've done that, we just need to go down to AI standard surface. We can find that in the long list, and we just click on AI standard surface. And you'll notice we get a little pop-up in our attribute editor here, where we have some options of the new, we have some options on the new material that we have just applied. The main option that we're going to be looking at is the base color. So underneath the base drop down, we have this color, and this is where we can start to add a little bit of color to our tank. So if I click on red, we have our base color change to red or blue or pink. We can also fine tune the selection of our base color using the color wheel, and adjust the hue, saturation and the values if we want to select an accurate color. We can, if we want to, color different sections separately. To do this, we'll need to separate the mesh because we combined it earlier on. So we need to separate, and for each section that we want to be a different color, we'll need to apply a new material again. And we'll need to go back to where we were, so shader and then AI standard surface, and then we can apply a different color to this section of the model. So I'm going to start again, and I'm just going to go to apply a new material and go back to my standard AI standard surface. I'm going to now do a quick test render of my model. And to do this, I'm just going to click this little icon that says IPR. So I'm just going to click that. And that should give us a finished version or a rendered version of our 3D model. Now what I'd like you to do is save this file to your desktop. So just make sure you save that. You save it into your temporary files. We'll just call it tank. Save. And we'll just make sure that we are moving this image from the temporary files onto our desktop. So we can now use this test render in our presentations later on today. Now, if your 3D model is not going to be textured by the texture artists, one thing we can do is add materials or adjust materials directly from Maya. So I'm going to click on any part of my object and go into the attribute editor and then head over to the AI Standard Surface 3, which will be at the end of this list. Once I've done that, I'm going to go to the preset list. And from here, we have loads of different materials that are already that are pre-set up. And all we need to do is select them. So if we go to the gold, if we wanted a shiny gold tank, we can click on gold and then go to replace. And you can see in our render view, we have a nice gold material set up with all of the properties and features of a gold material. So we've got lots to choose from here, so you can experiment with that. However, if your 3D model is going to be sent to the texture artists, that will override this section. So for any models you want to apply a quick material to, using the AI Standard Surface presets is a good way to go. So I don't personally want a gold tank, so I'm going to go back to our default material. To do that, I'm just going to create a new material again and just create an AI Standard Surface again. And I'm just going to collapse down. Don't need my Arnold render view anymore, so I can come out of that. So the final part of the process now is to save the project. There's a particular way I need to save it so that I can send it on to the texture artists successfully. So the first thing I need to do is just make sure that my 3D model is combined all into the same object. So I just need to select everything and then go to mesh and combine. So now everything is combined into one object. Just before saving my object, I want to make sure that my file is going to be saved to the correct place. Now to do this, I'm just going to go to File and Set Project. I'm going to go to my desktop, which is where my files should be stored. And I'm going to click on the Game Asset Creation project. Once I've selected that folder, I'm just going to go to Set. So now, anytime I save my project, it should be put into the correct place. So to do this, we just need to go to File and Export All. And we're going to go down to Files of Type, and we're going to find the FBX export option. Now this is an important part. We need to give our file a recognizable name. So because we're going to have loads of different files and we're going to be moving files between computers, we need to make sure that we give our files very clear names. So I'm just going to call mine Tank, and I'm going to be sure to include my name in the title of the project. Once I've done that, I'm just going to click on Export All. And that should write out your object to the correct place. So this process was designed to give you a good idea about some of the basic tools that you need to start creating assets inside of Autodesk Maya. If you'd like to start creating your own 3D assets for the rest of the day, please make sure that you start from the starter file that's provided on the Google Drive link. So if you've accidentally saved over the starter file, that's not a problem. You can go and re-download the project and find the starter file again. So yeah, just open up the starter project and you can get started with your own creations.